field, and all of it is packed with this debris. Behind it, they may find more pottery remains, canopic jars, maybe even mummified remains. Some of this stuff is as hard as concrete. Mechanical excavation is out of the question. All of it, tons and tons of it, has to be removed by hand.
But the flood debris was only one of the obstacles which still hid the secrets of KV5.
I think this is one of the most potentially interesting parts of KV5, but unfortunately it's also the most dangerous. Because it lay under the roadway, which for the last 40 years has had tour buses rolling over it, the entire ceiling has collapsed. It would be a very expensive undertaking, but I'd be willing to bet you that if we were able to do this, we will find evidence here, maybe a sarcophagus, maybe other funerary equipment, that clearly proves that this Chamber 5 was the place where one of the sons of the king was buried.
Because of the flooding, carvings and paintings on the walls of KV5 had been badly damaged. But as the chambers began to be emptied, remnants of carving made it clear that KV5 had once been magnificently decorated.
Now, the carving on this north wall here in Corridor 7 is absolutely spectacular. It's one of the best examples we have of relief carving in the tomb. Originally, of course, it was painted, and all we have now are the outlines. But even so, you can see the elegant workmanship in this figure of a son. Unfortunately, his name is missing. Again, being presented by his father, Ramses II, across a pile of offerings to the gods, in this case, Khnum and the goddess Hathor, elegantly carved in a beautiful face. But a strange thing happens in this corridor right at this point. Up to now, we've had beautiful relief carving. That stops, and instead, from here onward, the walls are roughened. It's called keying for plaster. I have no idea what the reason for this is, except one possibility. Perhaps this corridor originally stopped at this point, went no further, and then the corridor was lengthened, the tomb was enlarged, in order to provide additional burial space for additional sons of Ramses II who had predeceased him.
As more and more damaged carvings have been revealed in the tomb, the job of reconstructing their original form has been handled by Kent's wife, Susan. She painstakingly makes detailed tracings which are studied to recreate the missing carvings and the paint which covered them. Once the missing lines are redrawn, Susan replicates the original colors based on tiny fragments of paint found on the tomb's walls.
This is the son of Ramses. He's wearing a very bright blue collar, and he's wearing a rather elaborate priestly sacred garment, which is yellow with red stripes. Every day is exciting. You never know what you might see. Every time we look at the walls, even though I may have drawn the wall and stared at it for 10 days, every once in a while the light changes. There's something different I see for the first time.
Finally, after 3,500 years, we can again look upon the glorious paintings which once enhanced this tomb. But in KV5, success is often matched by frustration. Again and again, the tomb seemed to taunt the weeks, as if the great Ramesses himself were withholding the answer to the mystery of his missing sons.
We know that originally this tomb was magnificently decorated with brilliantly colored painted relief, but because of the flooding, a lot of that paint and plaster has washed off. And nowhere is that more frustrating than in this scene in the second chamber. We have Ramses II, a figure of his son, and directly above the son, we can just make out the hieroglyphs, king's son of his body, and the name is missing. We have no idea who it might be. Given the title, given a figure of the son, we were very excited about this. It could be maybe son number 6, number 7, number 8 in our list of people buried in this tomb. We were so close, but we just didn't get the cigar.
After 10 years of excavation, KV5, with more than 100 chambers, had already proven to be the largest and most uniquely designed tomb in the Valley of the Kings, and probably in all of Egypt. It had clearly been built by Ramesses II, and little by little, evidence had begun to accumulate that indeed he had created this tomb for his many sons.
We have the names of several sons written on the walls of KV5. We have more than 24 representations of the king presenting various of his sons in the afterlife to the gods. We have objects, grave goods, canopic jars found in the several chambers in KV5, and on those we have the names and titles of 5 different sons of Ramses II.
Kent Weeks would soon find evidence of a much more personal nature. In 1998, KV5 at last began to give up some of the bodies that had rested in this special tomb for so very long. Like any good mystery, what was needed to solve KV5 was a body. After 9 years of searching, Kent Weeks finally found one.
We had so many irons in the fire during the early years of work in KV5 that it wasn't until just a couple of seasons ago that we cleared the northern half of this room, Chamber 2. And much to our surprise, when we got down to floor level, we found 2 parallel, very nice, regular cuts that defined what obviously was a pit. Now, I think originally this may have been the burial place of whoever was buried in this tomb when it was only a 2-chambered tomb in the 18th dynasty. What we found when we got to the bottom of the pit was a series of layers of bones. And beneath that, 3 adult male human skulls with the neck vertebra still attached and traces of mummified tissue and wrappings over their body. Beneath that, we found a fully articulated adult male body, a mummy, about 50 years old, lying in a position like this, directly on the ground. And I think, probably, given the position of the arms and the position of the body, it may well be that that, and maybe the other 3 skulls too, are in fact sons of Ramses II.
Why would so important a mummy be left in such a crude and unadorned pit? Kent Weeks believes the answer is very simple.
When tomb robbers entered KV5, they went down deep into the tomb, into the burial chambers of his sons, grabbed the mummies and brought them up here near the front door, where the light was good and they could see what they were doing. They ripped the bodies apart in their search for gold jewelry and pectoral necklaces and so forth, and then simply dumped the body parts on the ground. Some of them washed into this pit. This is one of the 3 skulls that came from the pit in Chamber 2. And what we're doing now is cleaning this, getting it ready to study, not by us, but by anatomists and geneticists. All of the teeth are rather heavily worn, including the front, the incisors, the canines. And all of these features, together with the sutures, the joins between the bones and the skull, suggest that this is probably an adult male. The next thing, of course, we'll want to do is to try to determine, if we can, whether this is the skull of an individual who is related to the other bodies in the tomb. We would love to relate them to Ramses. Anybody who's seen a photograph of the mummy of Ramses, or even, in fact, a representation of him in Egyptian art, recognize the fact that he was shown with a very prominent nose. And that might be one of the anatomical features that we could look for in trying to determine relationships.
Scientific analysis of skulls is only one of the many tasks that can't be done in the heat and dust of the Valley of the Kings.
Some of the most demanding work in unlocking the secrets of KV5 doesn't happen here in the tomb at all, but rather in an office back in Cairo.
When we started work on the Theban mapping project back in 1979, we were operating on a real shoestring. Today, we have a full-time staff on the project of 8 people now, and a part-time staff of volunteers and part-time employees who are scattered all over the world. It's a very diverse project, and one of the fun things about being an archaeologist these days is, in fact, trying to pull all of these disparate specialties together. Can you pull that up in section? What I'd like to do, Summer, is take a look at this detail in here. The work our graphic designers and architects are doing is extremely useful. It gives you a new means of looking at the material and of doing comparative studies of that material. We want to prepare a CD-ROM of the Theban necropolis, taking advantage of the photographs that our staff have been collecting, the architectural drawings that we have been preparing, and of course historical materials as well. We'll be able, for example, to stop at a site like Luxor Temple on the East Bank, and we'll be able to generate a series of three-dimensional drawings that show the various stages in the construction of this temple. This, of course, is KV5. We thought we could produce something that would not only be useful to scholars, but that could be fun and exciting for grade school kids, for example, 8-, 9-year-olds who are doing Egyptology in school for the first time.
In spite of all his efforts, Kent Weeks is the first to admit that there is much yet to be done in KV5. The work is exacting and slow, and the task has continued to grow. So far, 150 rooms have been found, and only 7% of those have been cleared. But one thing has already been established. In 3,000 years of tomb construction in ancient Egypt, there is nothing that remotely resembles KV5 in its incredible size or design. Why did Ramesses II apparently create so unusual a mausoleum for his many sons? Kent Weeks thinks he has one answer.
We know that during his reign, he had himself declared to be divine. He had to assign to his children, to at least the heir apparent, many of the secular duties that he would ordinarily have performed. Now, once one of his sons, the heir apparent, was made a secular pharaoh, he was no longer simply a son who might one day inherit the throne. He was a junior king. And you have to bury a junior king in a rather more elaborate way. Numerous other of his sons, each of whom in turn had moved into this strange junior king position, died before him, and they too came to be interred in this very strange tomb.
There are still more questions than answers to be found in KV5, but the tomb has proven that our knowledge of ancient Egypt is far from complete. For Kent Weeks, the search, as always, will go on. He has wanted to be an Egyptologist since he was a boy in Washington State. Now he hopes to give something back to the work he so loves.
In addition to our work in KV5 over the next several years, one of the things I most want to do is help develop a master plan for the protection of the Valley of the Kings, and indeed for all of Thebes. Rising groundwater, pollution, increasing population in the adjacent villages, increasing tourism are taking their toll on all of the sites here, tombs and temples both. I can't think of anything that would make me sadder than to realize that future generations would be denied the opportunity to visit something as magical as the Valley of the Kings. It would be a real shame if little 8-year-old kids in Everett, Washington, 100 years from now, couldn't dream of this place like I did.
Kent Weeks has been working on KV5 for over 10 years. Sometimes there was no assurance that his work would reveal any more than a few empty rooms, and always the distraction of having to find funds to support all of this. But his patience and hard work have yielded what is becoming one of the most exciting finds in Egyptology. Over the next few years, KV5 will reveal more of its secrets. Why was such an immense tomb built? What's become of its contents? And maybe, just maybe, Kent Weeks will discover if other sons of the great Ramesses still rest somewhere within these walls.